що головне хочемо вас розпитати. Кількість нас, мене страшенно тішить. Мене звати Роман Вибрановський, я з Українського кризового медіа-центру. Ми спільно
project, and he's going to tell us why this is important and why this project works with the journalists.
And Dobre Ranku, it's absolutely a privilege to be here with you today. And I just want to start out by saying how much I admire the work that each of you do every day under challenging conditions. The role that you play in Ukraine to hold both the national and local level government institutions as well as private businesses accountable is absolutely indispensable to Ukrainian society. This is why projects such as USAID's Zayemodia project, which focuses on reducing corruption in Ukraine, are so motivated in supporting your efforts to constantly build your skills and abilities to constructively criticize and responsibly report on issues as well as report on solutions to the challenges of our times. We are also especially proud to be partnering with such an outstanding institution as the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, which plays an essential convening, networking, and professional skills building role in Ukraine's complex media landscape. In challenging economic times, as well as in an era where, not just in Ukraine, but also in the United States and around the world, local media outlets are either closing or getting taken over by bigger national outlets, coverage of local issues decreases, and this is a disturbing trend for the standard of living and economic health of regions. Recent research on local media coverage conducted by a group of top-level universities in the United States has shown through data analysis that when local media outlets and newspapers close down, government runs unchecked and costs of basic services such as healthcare, road repairs, and education increase. At the same time, the good news is that public demand for quality, data-driven, and fact-based reporting and journalism is increasing as the complexity of political and economic issues increases. Issues in the United States, for example, such as Russia's interference in our elections and the supporting role that oligarchs played in that effort, have breathed new life into those publications and newspapers that practice the highest standards of professional journalism, ethics, and public service. Likewise, in Ukraine, given the extreme security and economic challenges the country is facing, there is an increased demand for quality and actionable information. This year's annual USAID Media Consumption Survey, conducted by the Internews organization, has demonstrated a rise in the level of trust in the Ukrainian media by the public. This was the first time since they started the survey around 20 years ago that this has happened, so that's inspiring. The other good news is that with programs such as Prozoro and the amount of open data that is now available for analysis to get at the key facts, Ukrainian media, if it can keep increasing its analytical skills and intellectual curiosity, truly has the resources to hold the government accountable and make it more effective. Again, we are very proud to be supporting your efforts, and I wish you all the best for a successful conference and in your truly admirable endeavors. Thank you very much.
Дякую дуже. І мені дуже приємно представити першу панель дискутантів. Це люди, які насправді найкраще, як на мене, станом на зараз в Києві, найкраще знають.
Отже, the complexity of the analysis of the budget, the analysis of the expenditures. So first, Viktor Mazyarchuk, Natalia, Gusak, Igor, Chernyak, they know about the money that is spent at the local level, and Tetyana, Lebedeva, chairman of the Supervisory Board of the National Public Broadcasting Company of Ukraine. Please, Viktor, you're given the floor. So Roman raised a simple and important question, and it is difficult to speak about this topic during 15 minutes. So we would like to discuss this issue with you and to make some presentation. So the budget. So this is a political document, and we should consider it from this side. Why it is political document? Because this is coordination, an agreement between the deputies, between the people who form the agenda in the country, and not only in the country, also at the regional level, about the distribution of social benefits and taxes. And each of us, we pay taxes to national and local budget, and this is important to understand this, that this is agreement. And unfortunately in Ukraine and in many countries, this is not only connected with the economy, or it is connected with the economy only to some less extent. And I would like to explain about it later. And the budget is simple thing if you know a lot of details. That's why we should not only speak about ideology of the budget and taxes and strategy, but also why these strategies are adopted. Not only the state strategy, the long-term, the mid-term strategy till 2020. So all the strategies, they are connected. The logic is simple. And I would like to explain this to you, to explain this logic. So you have this information about the budget, how this budget process is ongoing. So this budget process, maybe I will go into some details in order that later you understand it better. At the start, we have some hypotheses. We believe that economy will develop somehow in the future. So we will have the increase of GDP. Some people do not understand what it really is, but business will develop next year or in the future. Whether it is good or bad, it is important because the proceeds of the budgets depend on this. Whether these are the proceeds of the state budget or Kiev budget or Chernivtsi budget or some budget of newly created United Territorial Community. So this money will be spent later on by them. So my question is whether they can spend more than they earned. Can they? In what way? There is no money. Where? So this is an important question connected with loans, and they are also in this first hypothesis that is created by the state. So next year we should give back more than 400 billion, and this is about the half of what business and we pay to the state. So is it a lot? Yes, this is enough. And where can we get money in order to finance education reform or to finance healthcare reform or to finance the construction of roads if we give back half of money that we loaned? So we take new loans in order to give back old loans. And this is a sad story. Unfortunately, taking into account current conditions, we do not have clear view that these burden will decrease. And the Ministry of Finance, this is some, so it adopted the strategy and they said that we will decrease the loans because we won't get more loans because we can get this money inside the country. So we will take it from the bank, from the business, and we will finance our expenditures. Why it is important to understand this? We take some money from business and we do not allow them to develop, and we provide it for expenditures to serve the this burden and to finance other measures. So at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the year, there are some hypotheses. GDP, inflation, and the state budget is formed accordingly. Then the Ministry of Finance takes the hypothesis and develop a document that is called the main areas of the budget. So this is called budget resolution, how they are going to develop. So now there is active discussion to go to midterm budget planning. Did you hear about this? No. So what it means? So we should form the budget not for a year, but for 3 years. Why it is important? Because each ministry, each department, and the city council, they will know what amount of money they will have this year, next year, and in 2 years. For the construction of roads, for example, they may say this year we will do this part of road, next year we will do another part of road, and they can plan correctly. Why this is not done now? Because the task of each ministry and each department and the body of local power, village and small towns to get maximum amount of money, and they spend it at once, because at the end of the year there is no money for the next year for them, and the procedure starts anew. And we build here, here, and here a little bit, and this is not really good, and it shows that we have a lot of under-constructed objects, and this midterm budget planning, this is a good thing. The issue is there is no consensus what it should be. This resolution, this is a philosophic document. There are no big figures and no detailed information about the money and where it will be distributed. There are main directions. We will decrease taxes, they say. This is a good thing. And we will carry out pension reform. And I like to compare it with the highway without any signs. So we go fast, but there are no signs. And here is the same situation in this budget resolution. So what is going on after this document is adopted by the government? It should be adopted by Verkhovna Rada, and based on this document, the budget is developed. Each ministry submits their proposals, and it can be done also, for example, in a city. Each department in your city, in your village, they submit their proposals to Department of Finances. Department of Capital Construction provides proposals about the money it needs. So these proposals are open. You can read them, you can analyze them. The healthcare department, the convenience department, and the Department of Construction. So it is important, and in the middle of this year, you can understand what expenditures will be next year, and you can compare them. So, and you can compare the information what your politicians provided. For example, they wanted to build a road or a new hospital, and you can see this budget proposal. And if this money is not envisaged, you can ask your deputy or local city head, you may ask, and what money will be used for this project, you may ask them. And you can compare their promises with money allocated, and it will be more difficult for them to deceive you and to provide promise that they won't deliver. So you are the fourth power. You are really powerful, and they are afraid of you because you criticize them professionally, because they do not deliver their political promises. And you may force them in order that they provided their promises to the documents. So this budget, demand for budget, this is really important issue, and this is done in the middle of the year. After this, the finance department in the city, in the town, or the Ministry of Finance, if we take at the national level, it goes to the parliament and they coordinate, approve this document, and locally it is coordinated with the local deputies, with commissions, and at the stage you may influence the process, and you understand that the deputy, he is responsible for his words. What are you saying? Sorry. So, and you may see whether the proposals are included to financing. And this is the key issue. And you can pressure, and the deputies and local power, they should deliver their promises. Then the budget is adopted and the expenditures start. About the money and the amount of money. So these are the figures of 2018, 2019. This is simple, and this information is open. So these are the figures that are used by selected people, those deputies and the local government and the ministries. Only there is one aspect. Do not believe, do not trust anyone. Because even I manipulated some information, and why I did it? Because there are manipulations provided by politicians at local and state level. Why it is so? Because they want to look nice in the eyes of their voters, or to use their manipulations and the money to manipulate. So this figure is more correct. The state budget is this figure, and the local budget is this figure. And do you know about transfers? These are the money provided from the state to the local level, and we see that the proceeds in the city, this is the money provided from the state, and we say they say that decentralization increased local proceeds, but they still highly dependent on the center because of different types of subsidies and subsidies and targeted financing. So the local budget and its division, communal services, healthcare, is really a lot, and the healthcare and social protection, a lot of money goes through the subsidy, and we should understand this. Provocative thing, really provocative. Locally, they say that they do not have money, give us money, and Kiev do not give us money, and so on and so forth. So deposits in the last 3 years, and the result of decentralization, the proceeds of the towns increased. In the towns, they put 16 billion into deposits. And we presented this information publicly. And Lviv said we have 600 million. We have 570 million on deposits, and this money can be spent Chernivtsi, 267 million. So this money is paid as taxes, and they let this money aside to use them later. So you can control these issues, because this is the issue of efficiency of the use of funds. So I speak it briefly, but all these things are connected with the efficiency of the use of money. A lot of money that is provided from the state budget, from the local budget, the subsidies, so social and economic subsidy, how they call it. They call it a political bribe, and this political bribe is provided to the deputies in order to control people. So, and the logic of this subvention is really simple: to provide money for strategic things that are connected with the development of the region. We analyzed what was financed and whether the distribution is even in all the oblasts. We see that this is not the case. We see the analytics of other centers, and they show that the deputies in power are those who vote like power does. They get more. And I would like to draw your attention to these things that are really very, very important. Next slide, please. And we will end at this. So there are no state funds. There are only taxpayers' money, the money that are paid by people. The key thing, you should use data, good data. E-data is a good resource. So this site shows daily payments from state treasury to different entities. If you like to see what was paid yesterday to Chernivtsi, sorry, I'm speaking about Chernivtsi, but this is as example. So what was paid to the council? So e-data.gov UA site, you can go there, and if you would like to see the data of the treasury for each oblast, there is good data provided. And used such mechanism as request for public information, because we carried out our research based on the analytical data. I advise you not to trust anyone, but just to verify all information and verify the declarations of politicians.
Thank you, Viktor. The only thing I do not agree with is not to trust anyone. We trust in those people who work in UCMC. The contact details of Mr. Mazyarchuk we have, so when we have need, we will contact him. I will give you the materials of my research so that you can share it. Well, it is very complicated to understand. It is possible to understand, but what to do at the local level, how to understand what is happening at the local levels, we should contact the persons we trust to find out. So how the budget processes are carried out. Good afternoon. I'm very thankful for the opportunity, for the chance to share the information I have. And our organization has a Kharkiv Anticorruption Center, and I'm also a deputy of Kharkiv City's Council, so the budgeting processes of our municipality in practice, I can provide explanations. Maybe this can be of interest to someone and you can use it in your work. So, What I would like to start with the process of decentralization, which is ongoing in Ukraine and at local levels. You see that the own funds of local budgets has been growing, as we can see from the slide, and this is really so. The resources of local budgets are far higher than in 2014 if we compare. So those fairy tales that there are no money and all money is in Kiev, this is not true. Talking about Kharkiv, as compared to 2014, Kharkiv council's or Kharkiv municipal budget is 2.5-fold higher. So the opportunities and resources are available at local level, but the thing is what they are spent for and what bureaucrats do not like to talk about. In Kharkiv there is a project which has been implemented, our Kharkiv Zoo reconstruction. We looked at the budget allocations to this project, more than 2 billion for reconstruction of only one facility are budgeted. When you compare the figures, you understand that 100 million are spent for the whole city to repair roofs of the houses, and for one facility they allocated 2 billion. How this budget is shaped? The community does not have efficient opportunities to influence the ways the projects, these funds will be spent for. For example, the community think they need healthcare institutions and roads, while the municipality, those in power, they decide that they need the zoo and they allocate money for the reconstruction of the zoo. So this is a kind of voluntary use of money. This way, the bureaucrats, they will have more, they will have better PR campaigning. So it would. The other thing I would like to add about the budget, we should analyze not only what is written in the documents, but also what is happening in practices. For example, for pictures, albums are bought and they are provided in the maternity houses for budget money, and you can see our mayor's pictures there. So what is the goal of this money? What is the target? Yes, healthcare, you're right. The other thing, this item of the budget means the introduction of modern information technologies, 3.5 million for information technologies in healthcare system, and they are spent for pictures, albums. The program is titled Innovations into Healthcare System, including information technologies, albums with the pictures of our beloved mayor. So, not everything which is titled good is good indeed. Also, public requests should be used by us. You see what is in the budget, what is budgeted. Then ask your local authorities or of your amalgamated community or your city where this money would be spent for what sort of information technologies will be introduced. So local budgets sometimes are very much expanded due to some events like up to 20 millions may be budgeted for holding the events. For example, I know the case in Kramatorsk. The actors were invited and their fees of 100,000 they were budgeted without any control on the side of public. What are the mechanisms if we talk about investigative journalism? What are the key resources you should use? Where to take the information you need? So, in fact, those 124 successful reforms for 4 years, this is the figure which is usually used for PR. The real breakthrough is ProZorro public procurement system. This system is mandatory for use for everyone who is engaged in journalism and in control over the expenditures at local levels. The ProZorro system help us to see this corruption. When implementing many of the projects, we understood what to do when the decentralization started and the expenditures should be controlled. We looked onto 2 neighboring villages which are repairing the roads. One village spent 800 hryvnias and the other 4.5 thousand. So the decentralization is in place, but it should not be the decentralization of corrupt practices. There should be some control in place, some watchdogs. Of course, there are prosecutors' offices, you may say, and some other state auditors bodies, but they do not work, in fact. They just give tickets to our bureaucrats, civil servants. So we are often blamed by those civil servants. That when you, investigative journalists or activists, public activists, can find corrupt cases, thus helping to our law enforcement bodies, when you learn how to use the mechanisms of ProZorro's public procurement system, you will work more efficiently. You will see not only who buys, but you may see how one and the same products are bought at different prices in different regions. For example, the second-hand trams were bought from the Czech Republic. So in Chernivtsi and Ivano-Frankivsk, they were bought at one price. I do not remember. It's nearly 1 million hryvnias per one tram car. The same tram cars were bought for 3 million hryvnias per unit. So when you see the 3 million, you should have the figure for comparison. Here you can use ProZorro system and find out what the prices were in other cities. We had the case of water administrations when they conducted their procurements. So there was the reason, the difference between 100.2 million hryvnias and 800 hryvnias for water treatment systems. When we come and ask, please explain why you paid more. So Prozora is very user-friendly tool for you. Then local authorities, municipal authorities, they will see when you demonstrate, not in general that there is some corruption, but you can present evidence from Prozora system that the citizens of other cities, they paid less, twice less for the same goods from their local budget. Here I provide you some interesting information about procurements via Prozora. The scope of public procurement via Prozora system is equal to 1.72 billion hryvnias. The savings of public funds thanks to Prozora system has been 59.51 billion hryvnias. The figures are very high. You should remember that very often the civil servants try to avoid using Prozora system. There is a law that defines the limit, the framework for using Prozora system. This is 1.5 million for provision of services, and this is 200,000 for purchase of goods. If we buy, for example, Morshinska water, we can buy for 200,000 bottles of water. Where is the corruption? 1.5 thousand contracts are made. If contracts are made for purchase of goods, they are for 199,000. If you see the figure 1,499,000, this means that this under threshold contract where civil servants did not use Prozora systems so that they can be not transparent. Prozora obliges to disclose and publish the materials of contracts. Not always the clients adheres to these rules. They not always publish the figures and the contract documents. So we have cases when 5 to 7-fold over stated prices were used. So you go to Prozora system and you see that the local council paid 120,000 for purchase of notebook personal computers. You can see that there are violations, and you can address the state auditor service so that auditors check and bring to liability the civil servants. And this system works. The civil servants are made liable. Here I would like to show you the specific results of our work with Prozora system. several sentences. In Kharkiv region, the project is being implemented by us on improving transparency under the aegis of the European Commission within the framework of this project, so that you understand some dynamics. It is like this all over Ukraine. Since January, we have analyzed 4,950 public procurement cases, and we found 420 violations of legislation. 65 complaints were sent by us to the controlling and law enforcement bodies. And if you see the violation and you write about this like journalist, but nothing prevents you from this, you just file appeal or complaint to a law enforcement body. This would be a logical end of your investigation, and this helps to make people liable. We have the result of 18 civil servants which have already been made liable. And we hope that by the year end, this figure will be 40 civil servants. So you are not only to achieve the result to make this information transparent about these cases of corruption and theft, but also you should bring change. So near this threshold purchase contracts, this is where the cases of corruption could be found. So the civil servants also manipulate by some other ways. They conduct tenders among several loyal companies, and they disqualify those participants, those tenderers who are not loyal to the civil servants. The last slide, the level of near the threshold purchase deals was 13.3% when the amount was less than 1.5 hryvnias. So our result is that thanks to using Prozora system, we saved 2.2 million hryvnias because 13%, this figure was achieved from 38 in the past. To finalize, I would like to say that the system which we have now, it is a unique system. If you use Prozora, if you use e-data, if you use the public register, state register, and you see who these companies are associated with, and also e-declarations, you can see who has relatives. So you have good resources for full-fledged, comprehensive journalist investigations. You should not go somewhere. You just enter Prozora system and you see the amount 1,499,000. Please look into this figure. In 90% cases, this is the case of corruption. So you will see whether the company is associated in the register with some civil servant. So it is extremely important to use Prozora system, and I wish you every success in working with it. You have mentioned the trolley buses. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Natalia Gusak. Last time when we were in this premises, we had the event, the West and the East are together. The schemes are similar both in the East and the West. Good afternoon. I represent the initiative Chernivtsi Procurement, which was invented by Nadia Grabinska, and jointly we have been monitoring all the procurements in Chernivtsi region. Mr. Viktor and Mr. Igor told us much about the tools we can use to monitor the spendings of the budget funds. As a financier, I would like to confirm that everything is interesting in regional level finance, starting with adoption of the budget. It is usually at night by voting by hands. Now, next slide. Procurement Chernivtsi looks into doubtful facts of public procurements for budget funds and transactions with communal property and facts of corruption. We wrote the posts in our blog, and talking about cooperation between journalists. Regional mass media repost our information from our website. We have 617 subscribers and 225 messages at our website, and we help to understand the doubtful schemes. We describe them. I orient to tell you about healthcare system. There is much money in this system. They are budgeted. In this sector, we monitor the procedure of negotiating and purchase of medicines and medical devices. We also monitor spending for construction and overhauls of healthcare institutions, procurement of expensive medical equipment. The topic is very interesting for journalists. The funds are available at local level. Why to build some facilities? You can just buy expensive medical equipment, even if it is not needed. If you analyze procurement of expensive medical equipment, you will see that all stakeholders on the market are from one pool, and you will never find, if you compare the prices and you call the seller and you say that you are a private company, the price will be 20% lower than the one for state institutions. I would like to provide you the example of perinatal center. All procurement in Chernivtsi, we demonstrate them in Facebook with vivid pictures. You see here the picture of perinatal center construction project. The budget money has been allocated and subventions also has been granted for this long-term build project. Nobody knows what would be with this construction project. More than 100 million has already been spent, and for 2 years we have been heard many amounts, like 65 million more are needed or 50 million more are needed. We monitor with the help of public requests many cases. You can see that one contractor could subcontract 13 subcontractors. This is in this case of perinatal center. So there are questions to deputies and to other civil servants who are interested in higher costs of this construction project of perinatal center. In response to our public requests, we got information, and Procurement Chernivtsi is also working at regional center through channel at regional broadcasting company is interested. Got interested in our investigations, and here you can see the materials which are interested in the framework of healthcare reform. Much money has been transferred to the international companies for purchase of medicines, and 2-3 times less money has been spent for procurement of medicines thanks to this control in cardio dispense of Chernivtsi. The journalists find out that the stents, such medical devices, were bought from vendors who sell fruit. But when we provided this information, local journalists did not get interested because the procurement system is morally complicated. Everyone thinks maybe he will need to go to this medical institution tomorrow with some health conditions. So here you can see the other material, and many journalists reposted this material about there are money not only at local level but also in state or owned institutions such as National University. For example, Chernivtsi National University, in the period when salaries are not paid to the lecturers via Prozoro, you can see that there is Kaliba being built for academic practices of students. I saw the sign of the national university when my family and me rested in the mountains. So we found this case of corruption that the funds have been spent for this rest house in the mountains by the National University, which do not pay salaries to the lecturers. We know that the law enforcement bodies now address this situation. So, as Mr. Viktor said, I can confirm that budget is a political document. Majority elected deputies, they like to build sports grounds, allocating money to this. We analyzed these cases. The funds were spent without tenders directly to contractors. So when we analyzed, all the companies were loyal to the assistance of this deputy. This material was interesting. We prepared it before the elections at the amalgamated community. So it was timely, and the result of this political party was negative at the elections. When sports grounds are built, this is good for PR campaign, but when you demonstrate how the budget money was spent, this provides you negative PR. Then the topic of building roads is also interesting. Sometimes you see, and it seems that the tender between contractors was true, and the price was halved by the tenderer in his bid. But with time, in Prozora system, you can see one additional agreement where the price is 20%, the scope of procurement is 20% decrease, and the second supplemental agreement for another 20% reduction of the scope. So as a result, the asphalt is bought for 50% of the scope, so you can find out what is happening in reality. The budgeting process is really very complicated, and journalists cannot analyze all the transactions. As my colleague says, I agree with them, but you can use Prozora system, e-data system. Our initiative has been working for 2 years, and we are ready to share our materials, our research findings, and we address law enforcement bodies so that the cases are investigated. We are asked why you did not go to law enforcement body, why didn't you go to the rector of the National University in Chernivtsi. This is not our goal. We just cover the situations, we provide information. This is our goal. So we have many posts at our website which influence people at local levels. we know that now chiefs of healthcare institutions are afraid to make corrupt deals with contractors for procurement of medicines because they know that there is NGO procurement Chernivtsi. The same concerns building project, construction project. So we will monitor further over the spendings from the budgets at the local and regional level. If I support my colleagues, there are many tools available. You can find cases of corruption within 1 hour every day. If you spend just 1 hour every day, you will find these cases.
Now I give the floor to Tetyana Lebedeva. As we found out, we have more money in the budgets despite poverty in our country, and there is opportunity to find and monitor this money. I would like to give the floor to Tetyana, and I would like to ask her whether the media are ready to tell people about this, because this issue should be brought to the public. So it would be looking nice at the conference, but maybe this won't help our country. First of all, I would like to thank everyone. We heard 3 bright speeches of the specialists who told you about concrete things and told you and brought examples how to work, how to search for data. And my speech is different. I would like to speak about us. Why about us? I worked in the regional media, in the Independent Association of TV and radio broadcasting that united the regional media. And for 20 years, it proved that regional media should not be Cinderella's in the big family of Ukrainian media and in information space of Ukraine. The matter is, there is such a phenomenon. It is not Ukrainian phenomenon. So regional media has a smaller audience, but the level of trust to the regional media is higher, and this is natural. Because people live here and now, and they want to know what is ongoing. They want to see themselves. They want to see the life of their towns. They want to know about the prospects and to understand what is going on here. And our national media they deal with other things. They are in search for rating, they like scandals, and often it feels that the life is limited to Pechersky region of Kiev and the regional events. They have the chance to get into national news only in case of some catastrophes or some really big scandals. So national media is not interested in local life and decentralization. It brings up new challenges. But at the same time, it provides new opportunities and also provide new responsibility for you. This should be the good time and at the same time the challenge for the local media. They should change the paradigm of their attitude to their audience, to their work, and they should prove that they are the bridges of communication and quality interpreters for their audience. And this difficult and difficult decisions of the officials and some corrupt aspects. And they should interpret this information. They should speak in good language for people, for their audiences, for their readers. So why they should be the bridges of communication? The word communication is the key. I believe that this is the time when we should change this idea of providing information to the idea of communication. You should know your target audience. You should understand what difficulties this audience faces and how to form information for this audience, and what channels should be used to communicate this information, and how to get a feedback from this audience. Unfortunately, often no one thinks about it, but it is important in order to be heard and in order to be understood. So we should know our audience at local level, and this is really, really important. I would like to say, often I go in the regions and first from behalf of association, and I'm now in public broadcasting that is being reformed, and it creates regional affiliates, and we go to regional offices in order to understand whether this new public broadcaster corresponds to the request of the society and the mission of the public broadcasting. And when you go to the regions, you monitor all the local media outlets. You try to do this. Sorry, but even now the majority of materials starts with the words. For example, today in the mayor's office there was a meeting about the preparation to the winter, and some people spoke at the meeting. But people are not interested in this meeting and who spoke about it, and broadcasting of the mayor's speech. It is not interesting for people. They are only interested in whether they will have warmth in their houses, drugs in the drugstore. People are interested in the price of public transportation, because trams were bought 3 times at a 3 times higher price. So you should start with what people are interested in, and you should tell about things that are of interest. And I listened to Viktor's speech, and in the counting chamber, the head of this department was changed, and he verified those budgets and how they were used. And I look at the site, and there is a lot of information, and I monitored who paid attention to this. And I understand that this is the crime, that the money that was allocated for the town that suffers, that doesn't have medicines for children, and they didn't replace the tubes for a long time. But this money is not spent, they are deposited, and this is a private business of the mayor. And it is transparent even for me, and I do not have education in economy, but national media didn't respond. Maybe I didn't monitor everything, but I didn't see the surge of information. But these are your mayors, and each mayor abuses the money that he should have spent for your life to improve the conditions of your life. And what about the investigation about this? Maybe not enough. why I believe maybe this is because, and I understand in what conditions regional media work. So there are not many people, and it is difficult to get proper funding, and editorials, they do not have a powerful group of investigative journalists who would find this information and carry it out proper analysis, how it is done by the participants of our panel. But the journalist cannot be a specialist in everything. But his responsibility is to find experts who would explain and provide objective analysis of the figures or the analysis of the facts. So what should be done? First, people should really care. When they speak about some standards of professionalism, this work care is not mentioned, but for the profession of journalists, this is the key. So people should not be indifferent about what is going on, because if you do not care, so your audience won't care, and if you really care, your audience will care. So you should find the information, you should analyze it, and what about your audience? It can only get the way to this data if you do not know the answer to some questions. The journalist should ask questions first to himself, and then to go along this difficult way and to understand what is going on in reality and use simple language in order to bring this information to the public. I believe in this, and this will be quality journalism, and this will differ from this huge amount of, this is really terrible, this is discreditation of our profession when the news looks like this. For example, they broadcast all the information and provide press release, or they say that this deputy stole something. And they put it on Facebook, and they say that this is information was provided by some blogger. But this is not correct for our profession. We shouldn't provide this information space to some fake special operations that are ongoing. And also to those who just PR themselves and fight among themselves at the national level. So we should be responsible, and we should really care. And this is my message. The unique opportunity is created by projects like this to help you to understand these difficult issues. This is the unique opportunity, and I hope that at UCMC there will be materials to help you, because materials in the regions are lacking. It is difficult to get all necessary information, and also the video footage for TV news outlets. And there are such outlets that help, and you should think about responsibility and care. So you should think about responsibility for your audience. Otherwise we would lose trust, and after this there won't be any sense in professional media. This will be just uncontrolled flows of fakes that now exists. But if someone still listens to professional journalism, so we should provide information, otherwise we will just choose the fake that would look like the truth. Thank you, Tetyana. We have some time for questions and comments before the second panel starts. Please introduce yourself first. Donchenko, I have several questions about Prezoro. Yuri from Kharkiv, you said that controlling body, they do not respond, that they provide some pressure and bribe. So what about the cases, whether the cases were started against such people, because we should believe only in facts, and also about Ukrgazvidobuvanie, about the procurements, what are the principles of the procurement? They often violate legislation on public procurement, and they should adhere to this law. First of all, I would like to start with the second question. The matter is the specifics and the spread of this law. This law envisages that such companies at Ukrgazvidobuvanie, they should use this law in procurement, whether it is correct or not. I believe that they should adhere to the provisions of this law, and I will explain why. Because Ukrgazvidobuvanie company, that is affiliate of Naftogaz Ukraine. These are the companies that have state share, and these are our companies. We are taxpayers, and these companies belong to us. And for a long time in our country, there was such a practice that state enterprises use in order to generate losses. And in many cities, the same is done by communal enterprises. And it is interesting for journalists, especially if we are speaking about this topic. Journalists should find out how communal enterprises work in your town and find out what losses or profits they generate, so the company should earn. And we understand that there are those enterprises that cannot be for profit a priori. So, for example, those who provide lighting in the street, in the streets, but the majority of companies should be for profit. And because losses will be put on you as taxpayers, and you will compensate their losses, and the budget will allocate financial help, and this will be covered by this money. So I will tell you about Kharkiv. In the first quarter of 2018, out of 67 communal enterprises, 61 worked with losses. So 61 had losses and 6 profitable, but only conditionally. So the sum was about 500,000 losses, and this is 2 billion a year. If we're speaking about state enterprises, they spend money from their activity, but these are state money, and for avoiding of any abuse in this area, the procedures should be used. Those procedures that are envisaged by law on public procurement. And briefly about criminal cases, please. About criminal cases, briefly. Criminal cases, for example, according to our claims, about 30 criminal cases were started. Against whom? Against officials. 38, 39. I do not remember the exact number. This is against the officials, against those who committed violations in procurement. So the matter is, the cases are started, they are registered for, and they are in the register for a year, but nothing happens with this case. And when you address law enforcement, they say that they investigate against, and in half a year we ask them what they do, and they say we investigate, and there are no mechanisms for the claimant. The law does not envisage, and this problem is often discussed in Verkhovna Rada, that those who file the the case, they should, for example, journalists and activists, when they reveal some facts, they should force law enforcement bodies to work, but there is no such procedures for the claimants at the moment.
I would like to tell you about Chernivtsi. We have been publishing many materials about this near threshold procurement contract cases. Two civil servants who are engaged in procurement, they were caught just for bribes. They took bribes for this, for allowing such contracts. Last year, according to the court ruling, they paid nothing to the state. So even court judgments, they did not rule to pay losses of budget on the part of these corrupt officers. There is a deadlock in which our system is. We agreed with my colleagues that those cases, those appeals, requests to the court, the filed cases, this is a kind of preventer which would prevent civil servants from using the schemes of corruption, because journalists may make their corrupt activities visible. This is like knocking and the door will open. Seek and you will find. Taras Beresovsky from Zhytomyr. I'm a journalist. I like the title of our conference, Constructive Journalism. And my question concerns the problems which we face at local level. NGOs which would like to be agents of change, they face the problems with addressing the system. The system is built so that it counteracts the investigations, and it is it remains unpunished. So the journalists expect the situation change. We want the facts, the cases to get the national level. So far we have the top managers such as head of regional administration. He can call to the prosecutor's office or law enforcement body and ask to close some criminal cases. We know this from Poltava case, which is resonant. I would start from faraway scenes. Without such people as you are, nothing will change. What we should do? Only where several people or several organizations at local level who will address this topic, then this biased and subjective and objective wall would be broken. Then the system will always oppose. The system perceives think tanks, journalists as the threat. So you will always need to counteract the system by reasonable ways by associating engage professionals who knows the topic, healthcare system, for example, consult the insiders who know details, and this will help you to become different because you will talk as professionals in professional terms and give civil servants the chance to understand that you understand what is happening as an insider. So when I told not to trust, I would like to say, I thought to say that do not trust to what you see. Ms. Natalia said that there were many contracts where the amount of contracts changed with time. How can you get this information? If you are a person who follows some specific case, look into all specific details of the same case. This will help you to be professional. Be brief, please. My main goal in this activity is not to start some resonant investigation. Our goal is to demonstrate the facts, how public funds are used. Then the more trust will be in those people who will be elected, because those people whose violations were made visible, they will not be trusted too at the elections. So the more disclosures, the more resonance we have, the more preventers we will have not to allow those corrupt persons to stay in the system. The question concerns there are many regional topics. At regional levels, there are family players such as brothers. We are the national broadcasting channel, and even if the topic is resonant, for example, there was a corporate scheme of allocating the lands, and we sought to cover this topic. We held press conferences. What we did, our news conferences were not interesting. We made a performance near the court. We made a cake, and this green cake, we cut it into pieces, and we provided the pieces of cake to civil servants who came to the court. So the story stopped to be local and it became national. It was broadcast at national TV channels because they came to cover the performance. If you are interested in some story, just you need to invent some interesting formats. Thank you to our colleagues from Zhytomyr. We gathered here to think how to help to change the situation. In 5-6 minutes, we will continue with the next panel. We will talk how to achieve target audience, how media formats work, how new approaches to new and old media work, the cases of Association of Media Business and UCMC cooperation, and the presentation of open resources. not only our partners but also donors who are open for cooperation. The key goal of donor is to understand what you want to achieve. So this panel is over. Thank you to our speakers.